The locksmith finished at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. I stood in my own doorway, watching him pack up his drill, his templates, his little plastic bags of old hardware. The brass deadbolt gleamed under the afternoon sun. The new key sat heavy in my palm. 3 copies, all mine. My wife of 11 years was at the spa. She didn't know she'd never use her key again. Before I continue, I need you to understand something. I'm not the kind of man who changes locks on his wife. I'm not the kind of man who tracks credit card statements at 3 a.m. or screenshots text messages or meets with divorce attorneys in strip mall offices. At least I wasn't. 3 weeks ago, I was someone else entirely. 3 weeks ago, I believed in my marriage. The locksmith's name was Danny. Nice guy, early 60s, gray mustache, wedding ring worn thin from decades of use. He looked at me when he handed over the invoice, really looked at me, and said, "You doing okay, buddy?" I almost laughed. "Just changing the locks," I said. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I've done a lot of just changing the locks. You need anything else, you call me." He left. I closed my new door with my new deadbolt and stood in the silence of a house that was about to explode. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa, my wife. "Finished with the massage, grabbing lunch at Nobu. Don't wait up. Having drinks with Megan after. Love you. Love you." I looked at that text for a long time. She was spending money we didn't have on a spa day we couldn't afford, while planning a $20,000 vacation to Bali that existed only in her imagination, and in the ultimatum she'd delivered exactly 18 days ago. "Book it by the end of the month, Michael. Book it, or else." Or else what? She never specified. That was the thing about Vanessa's ultimatums. They floated undefined, full of dark potential. Or else I'll leave. Or else I'll make your life hell. Or else you'll regret it. I chose or else. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that choosing or else would unravel 11 years of marriage in less than 3 weeks. It would reveal bank accounts I'd never seen, relationships I'd never suspected, and a version of my wife that had been hiding in plain sight since the day I met her. That's when I realized the locks weren't the beginning of the story. They were the end. To understand how I got here, standing in my own house like a stranger, waiting for the explosion, I have to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to the woman I thought I knew. Back to the night she looked me in the eyes over dinner and said those 6 words that would destroy everything. $20,000. Or else. My name is Michael Brennan. I'm 43 years old, and I build things for a living. Not metaphorically, actually. I own a commercial construction company in Charlotte, North Carolina, Brennan and Associates, 14 employees. Office space downtown on South Tryon Street, 3rd floor of a renovated textile building. We do mid-size commercial projects, medical offices, retail build-outs, restaurant renovations, the occasional small office complex. Nothing glamorous, just honest work, done right, on time, on budget. I started the company at 29 with $40,000 in savings, a used pickup truck, and a reputation for showing up when I said I would. My father was a carpenter. His father was a carpenter. I grew up on job sites, learned to read blueprints before I could read novels, and understood from an early age that your word is your bond in this business. 14 years later, we gross about $3.2 million annually. I take home around $180,000 after taxes, reinvestment, and payroll. Not rich by Charlotte standards. Not compared to the bankers and lawyers and tech executives who populate the neighborhoods where we do most of our work. But comfortable. stable. The kind of money that lets you sleep at night knowing the bills are paid. That's good money. I know that. I'm not complaining. But it's not spontaneous $20,000 vacation money. Not when you have a mortgage payment of $2,400 a month. 2 car payments totaling another $1,100. Quarterly tax estimates that make your eyes water. And a wife whose spending habits have been escalating for the better part of 3 years. Let me tell you about Vanessa. I met her at a charity gala in 2014, the Charlotte Heart Association's annual fundraiser held at the Westin downtown. Black tie optional, open bar. The kind of event where people who have money mingle with people who want money, and everyone pretends they're there for the cause. I was there because one of my biggest clients at the time, a cardiologist named Dr. Raymond Patel, had invited me. He was being honored for some donation or another, and he wanted familiar faces in the crowd. I put on my one good suit, drove downtown, and prepared for an evening of small talk and lukewarm chicken. Vanessa was working the event, not as a volunteer, as a coordinator for the catering company. She was wearing a black dress that managed to be both professional and stunning. Her hair was pulled back. Her smile was the kind that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. She spilled champagne on my sleeve. Somehow, she made it feel like I'd won something. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she said, grabbing napkins, dabbing at my jacket. "I'm usually not this clumsy. You must think I'm a complete disaster." "I think you're the most interesting thing that's happened to me all night," I said. It was corny. I knew it was corny even as I said it. But she laughed. A real laugh, not a polite one. And something clicked. We talked for 2 hours that night. She told me about growing up in Winston-Salem, about her dreams of starting her own event planning business, about the way her father walked out when she was 12, and how it made her value loyalty above everything else. "I don't do halfway," she said, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity that felt like a promise. "When I'm in, I'm in. Completely. No reservations." I believed her. God help me, I believed her. We exchanged numbers. I called her the next day. We had dinner that weekend at a little Italian place in Dilworth. Mama ricottas, red checkered tablecloths, and candles and wine bottles. She ordered the veal. I ordered the lasagna. We split a bottle of Chianti and talked until they started putting chairs on tables. She was smart, ambitious, warm in a way that felt genuine. She asked about my business, my family, my goals. She remembered details from our first conversation and brought them up organically. She made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. We dated for 8 months. I proposed on a beach in Charleston, Isle of Palms, sunset, a ring I'd saved for 6 months to afford. She said yes before I finished the question, tears streaming down her face, promising me forever. For the first 5 years, we were happy, genuinely happy. At least I thought we were. We bought a house, a nice 4-bedroom in the Dilworth neighborhood, a 1920s craftsman that needed work but had good bones, as my father would have said. I renovated it myself over 2 years of weekends. New kitchen, refinished hardwood floors, a master bathroom with a clawfoot tub that Vanessa had seen in a magazine and fallen in love with. I built that bathroom for her, tile by tile. Because that's what you do when you love someone. We talked about kids but kept pushing it off. When the business is stable, we said, when we've traveled a little, when the timing is right. The timing never seemed right for Vanessa. There was always another reason to wait. Her business was just getting started. The house wasn't finished. She wasn't ready. She needed more time to figure out who she was before she could be someone's mother. I didn't push. I told myself we had time. I told myself patience was a virtue. I told myself that loving someone meant accepting their timeline, even when it didn't match your own. But other things started feeling very right for her. The first sign I ignored came in year 6. Vanessa wanted to quit her job at the catering company and launch her own event planning business. I supported it completely. More than supported. I championed it. I gave her $15,000 in startup capital from our savings. I built her a home office in our spare bedroom, complete with custom shelving and a desk I designed myself. I introduced her to every client, contact, and connection I had. "This is Vanessa," I'd say at networking events, my hand on the small of her back. "She's the best event planner in Charlotte. If you need anything, corporate events, private parties, weddings, she's your woman." I believed in her. Her business never made a profit. Not 1 year, not 1 quarter, not 1 month. The clients never materialized. The contracts fell through. The almost deals that were always just around the corner never quite closed. For 5 years, I watched her business consume money without producing anything in return. But somehow, she was always busy, always meeting with potential clients, always networking, always attending conferences and workshops and strategic lunches that required new outfits and fresh manicures. I told myself it was an investment. Building something takes time. I knew that better than anyone. I'd spent years establishing my own company, eating ramen and working 18-hour days before things finally clicked. But there was a voice in the back of my head. A quiet voice I kept pushing down. Something doesn't add up. Year 7. The credit cards started creeping up. Vanessa handled our personal finances. She'd insisted on it early in the marriage. "You focus on the business," she said. "I'll handle the house. Division of labor. We're a team." It seemed efficient, practical. I was working 60-hour weeks, building Brennan and Associates. She was home more often, had more time to manage the bills and statements and accounts. Partnership. I didn't see the statements until I did. One afternoon in March of year 7, I came home early from a job site. Stomach bug, something I'd picked up from a questionable food truck near one of our projects. I was lying on the couch, half watching some home renovation show, when I heard the mail truck. I went out to grab the stack, something I almost never did. And there it was. A visa statement. In her name only. I wouldn't have opened it, except I noticed the minimum payment line through the envelope window. $312. I stopped on my front porch. That number didn't make sense. Our joint cards had low balances, I knew that much. We weren't carrying significant debt. At least, I didn't think we were. I held the envelope up to the light. The balance was $18,400. $18,000. On a card I'd never seen, never signed for, never known existed. In my wife's name. I stood in my driveway holding that envelope like it was radioactive. When Vanessa came home that night, I asked her about it. Her face flickered just for a second before the mask slid into place. It was quick. Blink and you'd miss it. But I saw it. That momentary flash of something that looked almost like calculation. Then she smiled. "Oh, that's my business card," she said, her voice light and casual. "Operating expenses. I've been meaning to talk to you about it." $18,000 in operating expenses? "Michael, do you know what event equipment costs? Linens, vendor deposits, client dinners? I have to wine and dine potential clients. I have to look successful to be successful. You know how this works." She shook her head. almost amused, like I was a child who didn't understand how the adult world functioned. This is what building something looks like. You told me it would take time. I had told her that. I'd said those exact words. I paid off the card. I told myself it was an investment. I told myself it was partnership. I told myself marriage meant supporting each other's dreams, even when the numbers didn't make sense. That was my first mistake. I should have asked more questions. I should have demanded to see the receipts, the invoices, the proof of where that money had gone. I should have done what I do with every contractor and vendor and client, verified the numbers, checked the work, trusted but verified. But she was my wife, and I loved her. So I wrote a check, closed my eyes, and moved on. Year 8 brought a new dynamic, the comparisons. Vanessa started comparing, constantly, casually, poisonously. We'd be at dinner, and she'd mention something she'd seen on Instagram. The Hendersons just got back from Tuscany. 2 weeks. Villa with a private chef. Isn't that amazing? Megan's husband just bought her a new Lexus. The SUV, fully loaded. Custom interior. Did you see the Morton's kitchen renovation? Marble everything. Double ovens. A wine fridge. Must be nice. I'd nod. I'd shrug. I'd say something like, good for them, and change the subject. But the comparisons kept coming. Every week, it seemed, there was a new friend with a new house or a new car or a new vacation. Every conversation circled back to what other people had, and by implication, what we didn't. I started to feel like I was failing some test I didn't know I was taking, and something else started changing too. The way she looked at me. I can't pinpoint when exactly, but somewhere in year 8, I started seeing something in Vanessa's eyes when she looked at me. Something that wasn't love. Something that wasn't even affection. Disappointment, maybe. Or calculation. Or both. I'd come home from a 12-hour day, covered in drywall dust, boots caked with mud, and she'd look at me like I was a problem she hadn't figured out how to solve yet. You need to shower, she'd say. Not, how was your day? Not, I missed you. Not, dinner's ready. Just, you need to shower. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself she was stressed about her business, that she was frustrated with her own lack of progress and taking it out on me. That marriage has ups and downs, and this was just a down. I told myself a lot of things. Year 9, the business hit a rough patch. A major client, a developer I'd worked with for 3 years, defaulted on a $140,000 invoice. The project was complete. The work was done, but he'd overextended on other ventures. And when his financing collapsed, so did his ability to pay me. It nearly killed Brennan and Associates. I had payroll to make, subcontractors to pay, materials costs that didn't care about some developers' financial problems. For 3 months, I scrambled, calling lawyers, negotiating payment plans, trying to collect what I could while keeping my people employed. I had to dip into our savings, our emergency fund, to make payroll. $12,000 the first month, $8,000 the second, another $6,000 the third. I worked 80-hour weeks for 6 months to stabilize. New clients, new projects, rebuilding from the ground up while fighting legal battles on the side. It was the hardest period of my professional life. During that time, Vanessa didn't cut back on a single expense. New handbags kept appearing in her closet, new shoes, new dresses, new reservations at restaurants I couldn't afford. When I finally confronted her about it, she had an answer ready. Michael, I can't put my life on hold because your business is struggling. I have clients to impress. Appearances matter. You know that. If I show up looking cheap, people won't take me seriously. We're bleeding money, Vanessa. I'm liquidating our savings to keep my guys employed. Can you just what? Hide in the house? Wear last year's clothes? What kind of message does that send? She shook her head, exasperated. I'm supporting us too, you know. My network is valuable. The connections I make at these events, the relationships I build, that's going to pay off eventually. You need to trust me. I didn't say what I was thinking. What relationships? What connections? Your business hasn't made a dime in 5 years. I let it go. Again. Year 10. The ultimatums started. They were small at first, almost reasonable sounding, easy to rationalize. I want to go to the spa this weekend. I've had a stressful week. Make it happen. We're going to the Hendersons' party Saturday? I already told them yes. Don't make me look bad. I need a new dress for the charity thing. Not negotiable. I can't wear the same thing twice. I'd push back sometimes. Try to have a conversation about priorities and budgets and the difference between wants and needs. She'd get cold, silent treatment for days, sleeping on the far edge of the bed. One-word answers to every question. A chill in the house that made winter feel warm. The message was clear. Give me what I want, or suffer the consequences. It was easier to cave. I understand now that's exactly what she was training me to do. Like a rat in a maze, learning that certain paths led to rewards and others led to shocks. Over years, she'd conditioned me to comply, to avoid conflict, to prioritize her comfort over my own judgment. By year 10, I'd lost the ability to say no. Year 11, 3 weeks ago. We were sitting at dinner, a Tuesday night, nothing special. Spaghetti bolognese I'd made from scratch after a long day at work. When she put down her fork and stared at me, her expression was different that night. Not the casual manipulation I'd grown used to. Something harder, something that looked almost like a threat. I want to go to Bali, she said. I laughed. I actually laughed. It came out before I could stop it, a reflexive response to what sounded like a joke. Bali? Vanessa, we just finished paying off your business debts. We're rebuilding the savings after last year's mess. Maybe next year we could look at... Not next year, this fall, October. I've already looked at resorts. She pulled out her phone and turned it to face me. A website. The Ritz-Carlton Bali. Ocean view villas, private pools. The kind of luxury that belonged in a different life than ours. The Ritz-Carlton is $1,200 a night. I want to stay for 10 days, plus flights. We'd need to fly business class, obviously. Excursions, shopping, spending money. She set the phone down. We're looking at $20,000 minimum. I stopped chewing. $20,000 for a vacation? For an experience, Michael, for us. When's the last time we did anything together? When's the last time you made me feel special? When's the last time you prioritized me over your precious business? I could have named a dozen things. The anniversary dinner at Aria 2 months ago. $400 for a meal she'd barely touched. The weekend in Asheville in the spring. The cabin she'd chosen. The restaurants she'd picked. The jewelry I'd bought for her birthday that she'd returned without telling me because it wasn't quite right. But that wasn't the point. The point was never the specific thing. The point was the ultimatum. I'm not asking, she said. I'm telling. Book it by the end of the month or else. Or else what? She smiled. It wasn't warm. Or else you'll find out, Michael. Book the trip. She picked up her fork and kept eating. I sat there, spaghetti going cold, watching the woman I'd married become a stranger before my eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to her breathe beside me, the same steady rhythm I'd fallen asleep to for 11 years, and I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The credit cards, the comparisons, the coldness, the ultimatums, the way she'd made me feel smaller and smaller year after year, while I told myself this was normal. This was marriage. This was what partnership looked like. But this wasn't partnership. This was something else. At 3 a.m. I got up. I went to my home office, the one space in the house that was still mine, still filled with blueprints and project files and the smell of coffee. And I opened my laptop. I don't know why I did it. Instinct, maybe. Or 11 years of questions I'd been too afraid to ask, finally demanding answers. I logged into our credit card portal. I looked at the statement, and what I found made my stomach drop. The credit card balance was $24,617. I stared at the number until my eyes burned. $24,000. On our joint card, the one I used for gas and groceries and occasional business expenses. The one I checked maybe once a quarter because Vanessa handled the finances. I scrolled through the transactions. Nordstrom, $847. Saks Fifth Avenue, $1,240. Louis Vuitton, $2,100. Four Seasons Charlotte. Spa Services, $680. Wine Society of Charlotte, annual membership, $450. Personal shopper consultation, Neiman Marcus, $300. Aria Restaurant, $412. The Palm, $387. Capitol Grill, $298. J. Crew, $234. Anthropology, $189. Sephora, $167. The list went on, page after page, month after month. Purchases I'd never seen, never approved, never been told about. I kept scrolling. That's when I noticed something else. A recurring charge. Once a month, $275. To something called Meridian Executive Suites. I'd never heard of it. I Googled the name. It was a short-term rental company. Executive apartments, furnished units for business travelers, corporate relocations, people between homes, flexible lease terms, monthly payments, the kind of place you'd stay if you were in town for a project or going through a divorce or what? I wrote down the address. A high-rise in uptown Charlotte, 15 minutes from our house. A building I'd probably driven past 100 times without ever thinking about who lived there or why. Then I kept digging. I found more recurring charges. A gym membership at a facility I'd never heard of. Not the YMCA where I had a family membership, but some boutique fitness studio in South End. A storage unit rental. A subscription to a meal delivery service that had never delivered anything to our home. Little expenses. Easy to miss in a monthly statement full of bigger numbers. But they added up, and they painted a picture of something I didn't want to see. The next morning, I told Vanessa I had an early meeting with a client. She barely looked up from her phone. "Okay," she said. "I might go shopping later. Need anything?" "I'm good." I left the house at 6:30 a.m., drove downtown and parked across the street from Meridian Executive Suites. The building was sleek. 30 stories of glass and steel, the kind of modern architecture that looks impressive from a distance and cold up close. A doorman stood under an awning out front, the kind of place that required a key card or a code or both. Not the kind of place you could just walk into. I sat in my truck for 2 hours, watching people come and go. Nothing unusual. Business types in suits, carrying briefcases, checking phones. A woman with a yoga mat tucked under her arm. A guy walking a small dog, some kind of designer breed I didn't recognize. I was about to leave when my phone buzzed. Text from Vanessa. "Where are you? Thought you had an early meeting." I typed back, "Running long, complicated project, home by noon." Her response came fast. "I'm going out with Megan, lunch and shopping. Might be late, don't wait up." I sat with that for a moment. Then I drove home, grabbed my laptop, and called the one person I trusted more than anyone in the world. My brother, David. David is 3 years younger than me. Tax attorney in Raleigh, partner at a mid-size firm that handles corporate work and the occasional high-net-worth divorce. He lives in a nice house in North Hills with his wife, Sarah, and their 2 kids, Emma, 11, and Jake, 8. We talk every Sunday. Always have since our parents passed. It's our ritual, our way of staying connected. But we don't usually talk about my marriage. I've always kept that private, kept the problems to myself, handled things on my own. Not anymore. "I need to tell you something," I said when he answered. "And I need you to just listen." There was a pause. David knows me. He could hear something in my voice. "I'm listening." I told him everything. The ultimatum, the credit card balance, the mysterious rental charge, the years of escalating spending and diminishing warmth, the comparisons, the coldness, the way I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. When I finished, there was silence. Then David said, "I've been waiting for this call for 6 years." "What?" "Michael, I'm your brother. I see things. I've seen how she treats you at family dinners, the way she rolls her eyes when you tell a story, the way she cuts you off, the way she makes little comments that sound like jokes but aren't. I've seen the way she talks about your business like it's an embarrassment. I've seen you shrink year after year, becoming smaller and quieter and more uncertain. I just didn't know how to say it." I closed my eyes. "Why not?" "Because you loved her. And you're stubborn. If I'd said something, you would have defended her. You would have cut me off. I would have lost my brother." He paused. So I waited. "I hoped you'd figure it out on your own. I think I'm figuring it out now." "Good. Then let me help." His voice shifted. Business mode. The way he sounds in depositions. "First, you protect yourself. Don't confront her. Don't tip your hand. Right now, information is power, and you don't have enough of it yet." "What do I do?" "I'm going to give you the name of a forensic accountant. Friend of mine does a lot of divorce work. She can help you understand exactly what's happening with your money, the stuff you know about, and the stuff you don't." He texted me the contact while we were still on the phone. Her name was Sandra Delgado. I called her that afternoon. Sandra's office was in a nondescript building near the Charlotte Douglas Airport. Not the kind of address that impressed anyone, but the kind that said she spent her money on talent, not appearances. The waiting room had fake plants and old magazines, and a receptionist who looked like she'd seen every kind of human disaster walk through that door. Sandra herself was 50-ish, gray-streaked hair, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked like someone's favorite aunt, until you saw her eyes. Sharp, assessing. The eyes of someone who'd spent 30 years unraveling the lies people told themselves and each other about money. She offered me coffee. I accepted. "Tell me what you know," she said. I told her. The credit card balance, the hidden charges, the Meridian rental, the years of spending that didn't match any income she was producing. She took notes without interrupting. When I mentioned the $275 monthly charge to Meridian Executive Suites, she stopped writing. "You said this has been going on for how long?" I checked the notes I'd made on my phone. At least 14 months. That's as far back as I could see in the online statement history. That's over $4,000, just on this one thing. She underlined something. And you have no idea what it's for? None. She's never mentioned it. I've never seen any correspondence about it. If I hadn't looked at the statement myself, I never would have known it existed. Sandra looked at me with eyes that had seen this 1,000 times before. Mr. Brennan, I need you to gather every financial document you can find. Tax returns, bank statements, credit card statements, loan documents, anything related to her business. Everything from the past 5 years at minimum. Can you do that? Most of our stuff is digital. Vanessa handles the logins. She set up the accounts, manages the passwords. Then we need to get creative. Do you have access to your tax preparer's files? I did. We'd used the same CPA for 8 years, a guy named Frank Weinstein, who'd handled my business taxes since the beginning. Start there. Frank will have copies of your joint returns. Those will show us income sources, deductions, any red flags in the numbers. She leaned forward. And Michael, whatever you find, don't confront her. Not yet. We need to understand the full picture before you make any moves. Why? Because right now, she doesn't know you're looking. That's your advantage. The moment she realizes you're investigating, she'll start covering tracks, moving money, destroying evidence. You need to know what you're dealing with before she has a chance to hide it. I left her office with a knot in my stomach and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. This isn't drama. This is a scheme. That night, I waited until Vanessa was asleep. I lay beside her in the dark, listening to her breathing, feeling the weight of her presence in a bed we'd shared for 11 years. I thought about all the nights I'd fallen asleep next to her, trusting, content, believing we were building something together. Had any of it been real? At midnight, I got up. I went to her home office, the room she'd insisted I build for her business, the room she kept locked now, client files, she'd explained when I'd tried the handle once. Confidentiality protocols. My clients trust me with sensitive information. I had a spare key. I'd made one years ago, after she lost hers and had a locksmith come out. I'd watched him work, and when he finished, I'd asked him to make an extra copy for me. In case she loses it again, I said. He didn't question it. I'd never used the key. I'd never even thought about using it. It sat in my desk drawer, forgotten, a small act of precaution that had never seemed necessary. Until now. The lock clicked open. The room was neat. Too neat. A desk with nothing on it, except a designer lamp and a single orchid in a ceramic pot. A laptop, closed, password protected, probably. A filing cabinet against one wall. Some framed prints. Abstract art that looked expensive but said nothing. It looked like a set from a home design magazine, not a working office. I started with the filing cabinet. The top drawer was empty, completely empty. Not even dust, just smooth metal and a faint smell of new furniture. The second drawer held a few old business cards, contacts from events she'd worked years ago, and a folder of magazine clippings about destination weddings. Places like Santorini and Bora Bora and the Amalfi Coast. Prices circled in red pen. Notes in the margins. Honeymoon redo? One note said. We'd honeymooned in Savannah, a weekend trip. All I could afford at the time. I'd thought she understood. The bottom drawer was locked. Different lock than the door. Smaller. The kind you'd find on a jewelry box or a diary. I knew where she kept the key. Back of her jewelry box, in our bedroom, hidden under a velvet tray that held her everyday pieces. I'd seen her put it there once, years ago, and had assumed it was for something unimportant. I went upstairs, found the key, and came back down. The drawer opened. Inside was a stack of papers, bank statements, from an account I'd never seen. The account was in her name only, at a bank I'd never heard of, Coastal Carolina Savings, a small regional institution with branches in Wilmington and the Outer Banks, but none in Charlotte. The statements went back 3 years. I flipped to the most recent one. Balance: $67,312. $67,000. In an account I didn't know existed. In a bank I'd never heard of. In my wife's name only. In a marriage where she'd told me 2 months ago that we needed to tighten our belts because money was tight. My hands were shaking. I took photos of every page, statement after statement, going back 3 years. Deposits ranging from a few $100s to several thousand. Transfers from accounts I didn't recognize. A paper trail that told a story I was only beginning to understand. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Locked the drawer. Returned the key to its hiding place. Went back to bed. I lay there until dawn, staring at the ceiling. Vanessa slept peacefully beside me, her breathing slow and even, her face relaxed in a way it never was when she was awake. Who are you? I thought. Who have I been living with all these years? The next morning, I sent the photos to Sandra. She called me back within an hour. This changes everything, she said. Her voice was different now, sharper, more urgent. This isn't just irresponsible spending. This is asset concealment. Do you understand what that means? Tell me. It means she's been systematically hiding money from you for at least 3 years, building a separate financial life. The question is why? I have a theory. I'm sure you do, but theories aren't evidence. We need to know more before we can draw conclusions. She paused. There's also the question of that apartment. Meridian Executive Suites. Right. I did some digging. It's a legitimate business, furnished apartments for corporate clients mostly. But it's not the kind of place you rent for storage or business meetings. People rent these units to live in, short-term or long-term. The monthly rate includes utilities, cleaning service, building amenities. You think she's been staying there? I think we need to find out. I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Webb, former Charlotte Mecklenburg PD, 22 years on the force, now independent. Sandra had recommended him. He's good, she said. Discreet. Knows how to get information without crossing lines. And he's seen it all. Nothing shocks him. Marcus's office was above a dry cleaner in South End, up a narrow staircase that smelled like cleaning chemicals and old carpet. The office itself was cramped but organized. Filing cabinets, a desk covered with papers, a corkboard full of notes and photos and business cards. He was a big guy, mid-50s, the kind of build that suggested he'd been athletic once and hadn't entirely let it go. Gray hair, cropped short, a face that looked like it had been in a few fights and won most of them. "What do you need?" he asked, after I sat down and gave him the basics. "I need to know what that apartment is for, who's using it, why my wife's credit card has been paying for it for over a year." "You have the address?" I gave him the building name and the unit number. I'd found it in the fine print of one of the credit card charges. "I'll need a few days. Surveillance isn't quick. People have patterns, but you can't understand the pattern until you've watched it long enough to see it repeat. Do what you need to do." He called me 72 hours later. You want to meet in person for this? Something in his voice made my chest tighten. That bad? Complicated. Meet me tonight. Same place. 8 o'clock. I drove to his office at 7:45, parked in the lot behind the dry cleaner, and climbed the stairs with a sense of dread I couldn't shake. Marcus was waiting with a manila folder and a look that told me my life was about to change again. Your wife's been using that apartment, he said. Regularly. 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes more. My heart rate spiked. For what? He opened the folder. Photos. Vanessa entering the building. Timestamp. Tuesday, 11:47 a.m. Vanessa leaving the building. Timestamp. Tuesday, 6:23 p.m. Vanessa on a balcony, high floor, maybe 15th or 16th, talking on her phone, glass of wine in her other hand. Timestamp. Wednesday, 7:15 p.m. And then, a man. Standing behind her on the balcony, his hand on her shoulder. Familiar. Comfortable. The way you'd stand with someone you knew well. He was tall, dark hair, going gray at the temples, expensive suit. I recognized the cut, the quality, the kind of tailoring that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I didn't recognize him. Who is he? Marcus slid another photo across the desk. A professional headshot. Corporate. The kind you'd find on a company website or a LinkedIn profile. His name is Derek Callahan. Works at First National Bank downtown. Vice President of Commercial Lending. Commercial lending. The sector of banking that handled business loans. Business expansion. Lines of credit. The kind of loans I'd applied for over the years to grow Brennan and Associates. Loans that required documentation, tax returns, financial statements, credit reports, documents that Vanessa had helped me gather because she handled the finances. Documents that contained everything a banker would need to understand exactly how much a man was worth. How long? I asked. Based on the building's visitor logs. I have a contact in property management. She's been going there at least 18 months, maybe longer. The records only go back so far. 18 months, I thought back. 18 months ago, Vanessa's business suddenly picked up. More meetings, more networking events. More nights she came home late, smelling like perfume she hadn't left the house wearing. More excuses about traffic and client dinners and conferences that ran long. I told myself it was success. I told myself I was being supportive. I told myself, there's more, Marcus said. He pulled out a final document, a lease agreement, for the Meridian apartment. The tenant's name was Derek Callahan, but the secondary occupant, the person authorized to access the unit at any time with her own keycard and mailbox key, was listed as V. Brennan. My wife had been living a double life for 18 months, and I'd been paying for part of it. I stayed calm. I needed more proof. I needed everything. That weekend, Vanessa announced she was going to her mother's house in Winston-Salem. Just for a night, she said, packing a small bag on Saturday morning. Mom's been lonely since Dad passed. I try to visit when I can. Vanessa's mother, Barbara, and I had always gotten along. She was a sweet woman, widowed 5 years ago, devoted to her only daughter. Early in our marriage, she'd pulled me aside at a family dinner and said, "Take care of my girl, Michael. She's been hurt before. She needs someone steady." I'd promised I would. I wondered now what hurt before actually meant. Vanessa left at 10 a.m. I waited an hour, then drove downtown. I parked in the same spot across from Meridian Executive Suites. I didn't expect to see anything. If Vanessa was in Winston-Salem, there was no reason for her to be here. but something told me to wait. At 11:30 a.m., a familiar silver BMW pulled into the building's parking garage. Vanessa's car, license plate VNB 2019, her initials and the year we'd bought it. She wasn't in Winston-Salem. She was 15 minutes from our home, walking into a building where she lived a second life with a man I'd never met. I sat there for 6 hours. I watched the building. I watched the people coming and going. I watched the garage entrance, waiting for her car to reappear. At 5:45 p.m., she walked out the front door, alone. She was wearing different clothes than she'd left the house in, a dress I didn't recognize, heels that looked new, hair and makeup refreshed. She got in her car and drove away. I followed. She didn't go to Winston-Salem. She didn't go home. She drove to a shopping center in Myers Park, one of the upscale areas south of downtown, full of boutiques and restaurants that catered to Charlotte's old money, and parked outside a high-end restaurant called Aria. I'd taken her there for our anniversary, 2 months ago, $400 for dinner. She'd barely touched her food. I watched her walk inside. 20 minutes later, a black Mercedes S-Class, easily $100,000, pulled into the lot. Derek Callahan got out. I recognized him from the photos. Tall, distinguished, the kind of confident that comes from money and power and never being told no. He walked into the restaurant. They had dinner together for 3 hours. I couldn't see much through the windows, just shapes, silhouettes, 2 people sitting close in a corner booth, glasses being filled and refilled, intimate conversation, hands touching across the table. At 9 p.m., they left together. He held the door for her, his hand on her back. She laughed at something he said. They walked to his car. She got in the passenger seat. They drove back to Meridian Executive Suites, and they went upstairs. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I drove home, sat in my truck in the garage for 45 minutes, and made a decision. I was done being a fool. But I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to confront her in a rage, give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I wasn't going to hand her ammunition for the divorce she was probably already planning. I was going to be strategic. I was going to be thorough. And when the time was right, I was going to act. The next morning, Vanessa came home. She walked through the door around 11 a.m., looking relaxed and refreshed, carrying a shopping bag from some boutique I'd never heard of. "How is your mom?" I asked. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, reading the news on my tablet. Normal, calm, unsuspecting. "Good. So good to see her." She set down the bag and kicked off her shoes. We had wine, watched old movies, ordered Thai food. You know how she is. She just wants company. "That's nice." I took a sip of coffee. "I'm glad you got to see her." She smiled at me. The same smile I'd fallen in love with at a charity gala 11 years ago. The same smile that had been lying to me for 18 months. Maybe longer. I smiled back. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was undeniable. Monday morning, I called Sandra. "I have new information," I said. "A lot of it. I need you to look at everything." We met that afternoon. I showed her the photos from Marcus, the building, the balcony, the dinner at Aria, the night they drove away together. I told her about the car in the garage, the fake trip to Winston-Salem, the 18 months of deception. She listened without interruption, taking notes, occasionally asking a clarifying question. When I finished, she set down her pen. "This is textbook marital misconduct," she said. "Infidelity, asset concealment, fraud. In North Carolina, that matters. A lot." How much? North Carolina is an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. That means the court has discretion in dividing assets. And behavior matters. Infidelity can impact alimony determinations. Asset concealment can affect property division. If she's been hiding money and having an affair while living off your income, a judge will not look kindly on that. What do I need? More documentation, proof of the affair. You've got that, or you're getting it. Proof of asset concealment. You've got that too. Now we need to understand the full scope of what she's taken, what she's hidden, and what she's planning. She paused. There's also the question of him. Derek Callahan? He's a banker, a VP at First National. Has he been involved in any of your business dealings? I thought about it. I don't think so. We use a different bank for the company, Wells Fargo. Always have. My business accounts, lines of credit, everything goes through them. What about personal accounts? Mortgages, car loans, home equity lines? My mortgage. I'd refinanced 2 years ago. Vanessa had suggested it, said she'd found a great deal through a contact. Lower rate, better terms, reduced monthly payment. It had seemed like a no-brainer. I'd signed the papers at a title company downtown. Stacks of documents, initials and signatures for an hour. I'd never met the loan officer in person. Everything had been handled through email and couriers. Let me check something, I said. That night, I dug out the mortgage documents. They were in a filing cabinet in my home office. The one space Vanessa never touched because it was full of boring business stuff. I pulled out the folder, thick with legal papers and disclosures, and started reading. Page after page of terms and conditions. Interest rates, prepayment penalties, escrow requirements, and there on the third page, loan officer Derek J. Callahan, First National Bank. He'd financed my house. The house I'd bought. The house I'd renovated with my own hands. The house I lived in with the woman who was sleeping with him. I sat back in my chair. Then I heard the sentence that changed everything. Vanessa's voice from the hallway. Michael, are you coming to bed? I closed the folder. Be right there. I went upstairs, got into bed beside my wife, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, something was different. Vanessa was being nice. Not just normal, nice. She made me coffee, something she hadn't done in years. She asked about my schedule, my projects, how the business was going. She mentioned that she'd been thinking about the Bali trip, and maybe we could find a compromise. I know 20,000 is a lot, she said, standing in the kitchen in her silk robe, looking at me with an expression that was almost tender. Maybe we could do something smaller, shorter, a week instead of 10 days. I just want us to have something to look forward to, you know? I knew what this was. This was damage control. Something had spooked her. Maybe she'd noticed my truck outside the Meridian building. Maybe Derek had seen something suspicious. Maybe she'd caught me looking at her differently and couldn't figure out why. Whatever it was, she was recalibrating. Softening. Trying to lull me back into complacency before I figured out too much. She didn't know I'd already figured out everything. I needed to adjust my strategy, too. Let me think about it, I said. Maybe we can work something out. She smiled. That's all I'm asking. Just think about it. I called Marcus that afternoon. I need you to dig deeper on Derek Callahan, I said. Everything. His finances, his history, his other relationships. Anything that's public record and anything that's not. That's going to take some work and some money. I'll pay for it. Give me a week. 3 days later, he had answers. We met at his office again, same cramped space, same corkboard covered with notes. Derek Callahan is married, he said, sliding a photo across the desk. A woman, mid-40s, blonde hair, attractive in a polished country club kind of way, standing next to Derek at some formal event, both of them smiling at the camera. Wife's name is Jennifer, married 19 years, 2 kids, a boy and a girl, both teenagers. House in Ballantyne, one of those gated communities with the golf course. Soccer games on Saturdays, church on Sundays. All-American family? He was living a double life too. But that wasn't the worst part. He's done this before, Marcus said. Done what before? The apartment, the other women, the whole setup. He pulled out more documents. I dug into his history, talked to some sources, cross-referenced property records and corporate filings. In the past decade, Derek Callahan has rented short-term apartments in 3 different buildings. Different addresses, but same pattern, same arrangement. What arrangement? He targets married women. Usually they're clients of the bank, or their husbands are. He has access to financial information through his job. He knows who has money, who's unhappy, who might be vulnerable. He makes contact, builds a relationship, gets them emotionally dependent on him. Then what? Marcus hesitated. Then it depends. Sometimes he just enjoys the affair until he gets bored. Sometimes he extracts money, gifts, loans, investments in fake business opportunities. One woman lost her savings account to a scheme he ran. Another lost her house when he helped her husband structure a loan that went bad. Helped how? Callahan was the loan officer. He set the terms. He knew the husband's finances better than the husband did. When the loan went south, he made sure the fallout landed on the wife, the one he was sleeping with. She lost everything in the divorce. My stomach turned. How many women? That I can confirm? 3. But there are probably more. People don't talk about this stuff. They're ashamed. They blame themselves. I thought about Vanessa, about the hidden bank account, the secret apartment, the 18 months of lies. Had she been a victim? Someone Derek had targeted and manipulated? Or had she been something else? There's one more thing, Marcus said. He pulled out a final piece of paper, an email printout. Dates redacted, but the content was clear. From V. Brennan to D. Callahan. Michael suspects nothing. He's completely focused on the business. By the time he figures out what's happening, we'll have everything in place. 6 more months, maybe a year. Then we're free. I read it twice. 3 times. Where did you get this? I have a source. Someone who works in Callahan's orbit. They weren't comfortable with what they were seeing. They reached out anonymously. I set down the paper. Vanessa wasn't a victim. She was a partner. They thought I was finished. I wasn't. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Vanessa's mother. Barbara and I had always gotten along. She was a sweet woman, lonely since her husband died, devoted to her daughter, grateful that Vanessa had found a good man in me. I called her on a Wednesday afternoon. Michael, what a nice surprise. Is everything okay? Barbara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. There was a pause, a shift in her tone. Of course. What is it? Was Vanessa with you 2 weekends ago, Saturday and Sunday? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Michael, I haven't seen Vanessa in 3 months. She keeps saying she's going to visit, but something always comes up. Her business, her schedule, some event she can't miss. I closed my eyes. Barbara, I'm sorry. I have to go. Michael, what's going on? Is Vanessa in trouble? I'll call you soon, I promise. And Barbara, I'm sorry for all of it. I hung up. Now I had proof of concealment, proof of infidelity, proof of lying about her whereabouts, proof that she was working with Derek, not being manipulated by him. Proof of financial deception dating back years. And I had one more thing. A plan. The ultimatum came due on a Friday. 18 days after she demanded the Bali trip. 12 days after I discovered the hidden bank account. 5 days after I'd confirmed the affair. Vanessa found me in the kitchen, pouring coffee like any other morning. She was wearing a robe, hair still damp from the shower, looking at me with that expectant expression I'd come to dread. "It's been a month," she said. "Have you booked the trip?" I took a sip. "No." Her face hardened instantly, the mask slipping, the real Vanessa showing through. "I told you what would happen if you didn't. You said or else. You never said what or else meant." "Don't play games with me, Michael. I'm serious. I'm not playing anything. I'm just done pretending." She stared at me. "Done pretending what?" I set down my coffee. "I know about Derek." The color drained from her face. In 11 years of marriage, I'd never seen Vanessa lose her composure. Not once. She was always in control, always managing the situation, always 3 steps ahead. Not anymore. "I know about the apartment. I know about the 18 months. I know about the hidden bank account with $67,000 that you've been building while telling me we need to tighten our belts. Michael, I know you haven't visited your mother in 3 months. I know Derek refinanced our mortgage and has been running the same scheme on married women for over a decade. I know you've been planning this for years." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of the email Marcus had obtained. "Michael suspects nothing. He's completely focused on the business." She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. "Where did you get that?" "It doesn't matter. It's not what you think. Stop." I held up my hand. "I don't want explanations. I don't want justifications. I don't want to hear about how Derek made you feel special or how I was never there for you or how the marriage wasn't what you wanted. I've heard enough lies." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Derek and I, it's complicated. There are feelings involved, real feelings. You wouldn't understand because you've never made me feel. Vanessa, stop." My voice was calm, steady, colder than I'd ever heard it. "I'm not asking for your side of the story. I'm telling you what happens next. You can leave right now. Go to Derek. Go to the apartment you've been pretending doesn't exist. Or you can stay here and try to work through this, which would require full disclosure, financial transparency, and marriage counseling. You're giving me an ultimatum? I'm giving you a choice. Same thing you gave me 3 weeks ago. Book the trip or else. This is the or else." She laughed. Actually laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that echoed off the kitchen walls. "You think you can threaten me? After everything I've put up with. The long hours, the construction dust, the boring dinners, the pathetic attempts at romance. I've been suffering in this marriage for years. Then leave. I will, and I'll take half of everything when I do. You're welcome to try." She stared at me, looking for weakness, looking for the man who'd caved to every demand for 11 years. He wasn't there anymore. "The divorce papers will be filed Monday," I said. "Sandra Delgado is handling everything. Your hidden account is already frozen pending forensic review, and I've reported Derek Callahan to the North Carolina Commissioner of Banks for ethical violations involving client confidentiality and conflict of interest." Her mouth fell open. "You can't." "I can. I did. I have documentation of everything. The affair, the money, the email planning to defraud me, all of it. I picked up my coffee again. You have until the end of the day to collect your personal belongings. After that, the locks will be changed. You can't change the locks. This is my house too. Our lawyers will sort that out. But Thomas Fairchild, my attorney, seems to think that 18 months of maintaining a secret residence while using marital funds constitutes constructive abandonment. I'm sure the judge will be very interested in the details. Vanessa's face went through a transformation I'd never witnessed before. Shock, fury, desperation, calculation, and then, remarkably, sweetness. She walked toward me, her expression softening, her voice dropping to something almost tender. Michael, baby, I think we're both overreacting. I was wrong, okay? I admit it. I made some mistakes. The apartment was a stupid decision. Derek he manipulated me. I was vulnerable and he took advantage. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can take that trip, not Bali, somewhere smaller. I just need you to give me a chance. She reached out to touch my arm. I stepped back. Vanessa, I've given you 11 years of chances. I've paid off credit cards you hid from me. I've funded a business that never made a dime. I've ignored every warning sign because I wanted to believe in us. That's over now. You'll regret this. Maybe, but I'll regret it less than spending another decade being used. She grabbed her purse from the counter. Fine. You want me gone? I'm gone. But don't think for a second this is over. I'll take you for everything you have, Michael. The house, the business, everything you've built. I'll burn it all down before I let you walk away from me. I look forward to watching you try. She slammed the door on her way out. I stood in the kitchen, heart pounding, hands steady. Then I called Danny the locksmith. The next 72 hours were controlled chaos. Vanessa called 16 times. I didn't answer. She texted 43 messages, ranging from rage to pleading to threats to bargaining. I read them all, screenshotted them for the record, and didn't respond. She sent 2 emails, one threatening legal action, one begging for another chance. I forwarded both to Sandra. On Saturday morning, she sent her mother to the house. Barbara showed up at my door looking exhausted and confused, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Michael, I don't understand what's happening. Vanessa called me crying. She says you've thrown her out, that you've frozen her bank accounts, that you're trying to destroy her. I invited Barbara in, made her tea, sat across from her at the kitchen table. Barbara, I'm going to tell you the truth, all of it, and then you can decide what you believe. I told her everything. The hidden account, the affair, the apartment, the 18 months of lies, the email discussing how to defraud me. Barbara listened in silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. When I finished, she set down her tea with trembling hands. I knew something was wrong. Mothers know. But I didn't want to see it. I made excuses. I told myself she was under stress, that her business was struggling, that she just needed time. You didn't do anything wrong, Barbara. I should have said something. Years ago, when she started talking about you differently, when she stopped visiting, her voice broke. I don't know where I went wrong with her. This isn't your fault. She's my daughter. She came from me. How can it not be my fault? I didn't have an answer for that. Barbara left an hour later, promising to stay neutral, promising to try to talk sense into Vanessa, promising things we both knew she couldn't deliver. And then Vanessa made her biggest mistake. Sunday afternoon. I was in my home office going through financial documents with Sandra on a video call when I heard a car in the driveway. I looked out the window, Vanessa's BMW, and behind it, a black Mercedes, Derek Callahan. She'd brought him to my house. I watched them get out. Vanessa was wearing sunglasses, her body language tense and agitated. Derek was calm, confident, straightening his jacket like he was walking into a business meeting. They approached the front door. Vanessa tried her key. It didn't work. She tried again, jabbed at the lock, pulled the key out and examined it like it had personally betrayed her. Then she started pounding. "Michael, open this door. You can't lock me out of my own house." I ended the call with Sandra and walked to the front door. I opened it. Vanessa stumbled back, surprised. "Vanessa, let me in. Why is he here?" She glanced back at the Mercedes, where Derek was leaning against the hood, arms crossed, watching the scene with a slight smile. "He's my friend. He's supporting me." "Is that what you call it?" "Michael, I need to get my things. You can't keep me from my things. I told you Friday, personal belongings, by end of day. That was 2 days ago." "I wasn't here Friday. I was at the Meridian apartment with your friend." I nodded toward Derek. "I know." Derek was watching us now, still smiling, the smile of a man who thought he'd seen this all before, who thought he knew how it would end. He didn't. "Let me get my clothes," Vanessa said. "Just my clothes. That's all I'm asking, please." I considered. "Fine. 30 minutes. I'll be watching." I stepped aside. She pushed past me and went upstairs. I walked to the living room and stood by the window watching Derek's car. He pulled out his phone, typed something, put it away. For 25 minutes, Vanessa ransacked our bedroom. I could hear everything: drawers slamming, hangers clattering, suitcases being dragged across hardwood floors. She wasn't being subtle about it. At minute 26, she came downstairs with 2 large rolling suitcases and a garment bag over her shoulder. "I'll be back for the rest." "Arrange it through your lawyer." She paused at the door. "Michael," I waited. "I know you think I'm the villain here, but you don't know the whole story. There are things you don't understand. Things Derek and I—" Derek honked the horn. The moment shattered. "I have to go," she said. She walked out, got in Derek's car. They drove away. I closed the door and locked it. Then I called Marcus. They just left, together. She tried to use her key and couldn't. Good. That's good. Let her think she's in control. What's next? Now we wait, and we watch. And when they make their next move, we're ready. Over the next 2 weeks, the trap took shape. Sandra filed the divorce papers on Monday, as promised. North Carolina law requires a year of separation before a divorce can be finalized. But all the legal mechanisms, discovery motions, asset freezes, temporary support hearings, could begin immediately. Vanessa hired an attorney. His name was Richard Pratt. High-powered, expensive, the kind of lawyer who took aggressive divorce cases on contingency, betting on big settlements to fund his practice. The first thing Pratt did was file a motion claiming I'd illegally locked Vanessa out of the marital home and demanding immediate restoration of access. Thomas Fairchild countered with documentation. The Meridian lease showing Vanessa as an authorized occupant, credit card records proving 18 months of payments, surveillance photos establishing her regular presence at the apartment. Your Honor, Mrs. Brennan has maintained a separate residence for a year and a half, while claiming to live in the marital home. She cannot now claim to be illegally excluded from a property she voluntarily abandoned. The judge denied Pratt's motion. First victory. But Pratt wasn't finished. He filed for emergency alimony. His motion painted a picture of a helpless wife, cast out by a controlling husband, left with no income, no assets, no way to support herself. Sandra countered with the frozen bank account records. $67,312, accumulated over 3 years, while Vanessa claimed she had no personal savings. The judge denied the emergency motion and ordered a full forensic accounting. Second victory. Vanessa was getting desperate. I could tell from the escalating messages. The tone shifted from threatening to pleading to bargaining. She was running out of options, and she knew it. Then she made her next play. She called my mother. My mother is 74 years old. She lives alone in the house where I grew up, a small brick ranch in Gastonia, about 30 minutes west of Charlotte. She's got a good heart, trusts people too easily, and loves me more than anything in the world. She called me Thursday evening. "Michael, honey, I just got off the phone with Vanessa." My stomach tightened. "What did she say?" "She says you've lost your mind, that you've thrown her out with nothing, that you're being influenced by lawyers who only want your money." She was crying, Michael. She sounded so upset. I took a breath. "Mom, I need to tell you the truth. The whole truth, and then you can decide what you believe." I drove to Gastonia that night, sat in my mother's kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd eaten breakfast every morning as a kid, and told her everything. The affair, the hidden money, the lies about visiting Barbara, the 18 months of deception, the email planning my financial destruction. When I finished, my mother was quiet for a long time. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. "I always knew," she said. "Knew what?" "That something was off, from the beginning. The way she looked at you sometimes, like she was calculating something. The way she talked about your work like it was beneath her. The way she made you smaller every time I saw you." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you loved her. And you're stubborn. If I'd pushed, you would have defended her. You might have chosen her over me." She squeezed my hand. "I couldn't risk losing you. So I waited, and I prayed. And I hoped you'd figure it out before she destroyed you. She almost did. But she didn't. That's what matters." After that conversation, Vanessa's narrative started to crumble. She'd been counting on the sympathy card, the poor, abandoned wife, the cruel, controlling husband. But everyone she tried to recruit kept hearing the other side. Her friends, her colleagues, her own mother. One by one, the allies she'd expected to rally around her started pulling away. But she had one more card to play. It came in the form of a text message, a blocked number, an anonymous sender. "Your wife is trying to destroy you. I have information that can help. Meet me at Aria Restaurant, 7 p.m. tonight. Come alone." I stared at the message for a long time. Aria was where I'd followed Vanessa and Derek, where they'd had dinner before going back to the apartment. This could be a trap, but it could also be something else. I called Marcus. "Can you trace this number?" He called back an hour later. "Burner phone. Prepaid. Bought at a Walmart in Gastonia 3 weeks ago. No way to identify the owner." "What do you think?" "I think someone wants to meet you without leaving a trail. Could be helpful. Could be dangerous. Should I go?" Marcus paused. "If it were me, I'd go, but I'd make sure I wasn't alone." I showed up at Aria at 6:45 p.m. Marcus was already inside, sitting at the bar, nursing a beer and pretending to watch a basketball game on the TV overhead. I took a table in the back corner, facing the entrance, ordered water, waited. At exactly 7 p.m., a woman walked in. She was mid-30s, blonde hair, expensively styled, designer clothes, understated quality. The kind of woman who looked like she belonged in Ballantyne or Myers Park. The kind of woman you'd see at charity galas and country club functions. She scanned the room, spotted me, and walked over. "Michael Brennan?" "That's me. Who are you?" She sat down across from me, setting a leather handbag on the chair beside her. "My name is Jennifer Callahan. I'm Derek's wife." The restaurant noise seemed to fade. "I know about your situation," she continued. "I know about Vanessa. I know about the apartment. I know about the scheme. All of it." "How?" "Because I've been living with it for 7 years." She told me her story. They'd met in college. Duke University, economics majors, young and ambitious. Married at 23, kids by 28, the perfect life in the perfect neighborhood. But Derek had started cheating early. Different women, different approaches, but always the same pattern. He targeted married women, gained their trust through banking relationships and professional connections, extracted what he could: money, information, the thrill of the game. Jennifer had found out 6 years ago. "I was devastated," she said. "I confronted him. He admitted everything, or what I thought was everything. He promised to stop. Marriage counseling, new commitment, fresh start. But he didn't stop. He got more careful. New phone, different apartment, better lies. And I was so desperate to believe him that I accepted it. For years, I accepted it." "Why didn't you leave?" Her expression tightened. "Because he made sure I couldn't. We have a prenup. Ironclad, his family's lawyers drafted it. If I divorce him without proof of infidelity, I get almost nothing. And he's very good at not leaving proof." "So why are you here now?" She met my eyes. "Because I found out about the regulatory complaint you filed. The North Carolina Commissioner of Banks is investigating. His career is over, which means the prenup doesn't matter anymore. His assets, his reputation, everything he's built is about to collapse." She leaned forward. "And that means I have nothing left to lose." "What do you want?" "I want to help you take him down, and I want you to help me get free." We talked for 3 hours. Jennifer had documentation I'd never seen. Internal emails from First National showing Derek accessing confidential client files for personal purposes. Bank records revealing patterns of targeting married women through mortgage applications and loan reviews. A paper trail connecting him to at least 5 affairs over the past decade, 3 of which had ended in financial devastation for the women involved. "He has a system," she explained. "He identifies targets through their financial profiles. Wealthy husbands, wives who seem unhappy or vulnerable. He makes contact through the bank. Refinancing meetings, loan reviews, account consultations. He's charming, attentive. He makes them feel seen and valued. And then he extracts. Money sometimes. Information always. He learns everything about their finances, their marriages, their weaknesses. By the time they realize what's happening, he's already moved on to someone new." I thought about Vanessa, about the hidden account, the secret apartment, the emails planning my financial destruction. "Vanessa wasn't a victim," I said. Jennifer shook her head. "No, she wasn't. I found emails between them going back 3 years. Before the apartment, before the affair went physical. She knew exactly what Derek was from the beginning. She saw an opportunity and took it." She slid a folder across the table. "Read them." I did. The emails painted a picture I hadn't wanted to see. Vanessa had approached Derek, not the other way around. She'd identified him at a networking event, researched his reputation, and made contact with a specific goal in mind. "I need someone who understands how these things work," she'd written in an early exchange. "Someone who can help me plan for the future I deserve. Michael has money, but he doesn't have vision. I do." Derek's response: "What kind of future are you planning?" "The kind where I don't have to pretend anymore." They'd been working together for 3 years, building a plan, identifying assets, positioning Vanessa to maximize her take in a divorce. The ultimatum, the $20,000 vacation, was supposed to be the trigger. If I booked the trip, she'd have evidence of financial recklessness she could use in court. If I refused, she'd have grounds for complaint. A husband who neglected her needs, who refused to invest in their marriage. Either way, she won. At least that was the plan. I set down the folder. "Can I keep these?" Jennifer nodded. "That's why I printed them. I want you to have everything. For the divorce. For the investigation. For whatever comes next." "Why are you doing this?" She looked at me with something like exhaustion. "Because I'm tired of being complicit. Because I have 2 kids who deserve better than a father like Derek. Because maybe if we work together, we can both get out of this nightmare." We made a plan. The public confrontation came 3 weeks later. The venue, a conference room at First National Bank's corporate headquarters in uptown Charlotte. Glass walls, mahogany table, the kind of sterile corporate environment where careers were made and destroyed. The bank's general counsel had called the meeting. Present were Derek Callahan, his personal attorney, the bank's head of HR, a representative from the North Carolina Commissioner of Banks, and, at my formal request, Sandra Delgado, also present, via video link, Jennifer Callahan, and me. Derek looked confused when I walked in. His eyes moved from me to Sandra to the banking commissioner's representative, trying to understand what was happening. "What is this?" he asked his attorney. "Why is he here?" The general counsel, a silver-haired woman named Patricia Morrison, cleared her throat. "Mr. Callahan, this meeting has been called to address serious allegations regarding your conduct as an employee of First National Bank." "What allegations?" "Unauthorized access to confidential client information, manipulation of loan applications for personal benefit, ethical violations related to personal relationships with bank customers." Derek's face went pale. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked uncertain. "What? Those are lies. I don't know what this man has told you, but—" "Mr. Callahan." Morrison's voice was ice. "The allegations don't come from Mr. Brennan alone." She pressed a button on the conference phone. Jennifer's face appeared on the wall screen. "Hello, Derek." What followed was 45 minutes of systematic destruction. Jennifer presented the emails, 3 years of correspondence showing the affair, the planning, the scheme. Sandra presented the financial records, the hidden account, the credit card charges, the paper trail of deception. The banking commissioner's representative presented the preliminary findings of their investigation. Unauthorized access to client files. Pattern behavior spanning a decade. Multiple women targeted through their financial relationships with the bank. Derek tried to deny everything. He blamed me for fabricating evidence. He blamed Jennifer for being a scorned wife. He blamed the bank for a witch hunt motivated by corporate politics. But the evidence was overwhelming. The emails had been authenticated by an independent digital forensics firm. Time-stamped, server-verified, chain of custody documented. The financial records matched bank audit trails. The pattern of behavior was corroborated by 3 other women who'd come forward after learning about the investigation. By the end of the meeting, Patricia Morrison delivered the verdict. Mr. Callahan, your employment with First National Bank is terminated effective immediately. Your professional licenses are under review by the State Regulatory Board, and this matter is being referred to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution. Derek's attorney started objecting, demanding time to respond, threatening lawsuits. Morrison cut him off. You're welcome to pursue any legal remedies you believe are appropriate, Mr. Callahan. In the meantime, security will escort you from the building. You have 15 minutes to collect your personal effects from your office. After that, your access credentials will be deactivated. She stood. This meeting is adjourned. I walked out of that conference room and stood in the hallway, looking out at the Charlotte skyline. Sandra joined me. How do you feel? I thought about it. Empty, I said. And relieved, and empty. That's normal. Endings are complicated. Is it over? The worst part is, the divorce will take time. Discovery, negotiations, court dates. But the leverage has shifted. Vanessa's narrative has collapsed. Her ally is facing criminal charges. And you have documentation of everything. She paused. You won, Michael. As much as anyone wins something like this. I nodded. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving. The divorce was finalized 13 months later. In that time, several things happened. Derek Callahan pleaded no contest to banking fraud charges. He lost his license permanently, served 8 months in a minimum security federal facility, and emerged to find his career, his reputation, and his marriage in ruins. Jennifer followed through on her promise. She filed for divorce, provided testimony in the regulatory investigation, and received a settlement that included full custody of their children. Last I heard, she'd moved to Raleigh, started a consulting business, and was rebuilding her life from the ground up. Vanessa fought the divorce every step of the way. Her attorney filed motion after motion, challenging the asset freeze, disputing the forensic accounting, claiming the evidence against her had been obtained illegally. Each motion was denied. Each appeal was rejected. The forensic accounting revealed the full scope of her deception. Over 11 years, she'd extracted approximately $214,000 from our marriage through hidden accounts, unreported spending, manipulated credit, and business expenses that had never supported any actual business. The judge was not sympathetic. In the final ruling, Vanessa received no alimony. The marital home was awarded to me, along with all equity, approximately $340,000 after the mortgage payoff. She was ordered to return $47,000 of the hidden funds as part of equitable distribution. She appealed. The appeal was denied. Last I heard, she was living in a one-bedroom apartment in Greensboro, working as an event consultant for a friend's catering company. Derek had moved to Florida, pursuing some new venture that would probably collapse like all the others. I kept the house, I changed all the locks, and I started the long, slow process of rebuilding. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I sat on my back porch at sunset, watching the light fade over the city I'd called home for 20 years. The yard looked different now. I'd ripped out the elaborate landscaping Vanessa had insisted on. The high-maintenance flower beds, the ornamental shrubs, the geometric patterns that required professional maintenance every month. In their place, simple grass, native plants, a small vegetable garden I'd started in the spring. Nothing fancy, just real. My phone buzzed. Text from my brother, David. How are you holding up? Haven't talked in a few days. I typed back, better. Getting there. Want to come for dinner this weekend? Kids keep asking about Uncle Michael. I'd like that. I put down the phone and watched the sky turn orange and pink. For 11 years, I'd lived in a marriage I thought was a partnership. I'd worked hard, stayed loyal, believed in commitment. I'd ignored warning signs because I wanted to be the kind of man who didn't give up on the people he loved. But some people don't want to be loved. They want to be served. They want someone to fund their lifestyle, support their image, absorb their disappointments without complaint. They want a provider, a target, a mark. I'd been all of those things for Vanessa. I wasn't anymore. The lesson I took from those 11 years isn't that love is dangerous, or that trust is foolish, or that marriage is a trap. The lesson is simpler. Pay attention. When someone shows you who they are, through actions, not words, through patterns, not promises, believe them. I'd seen the signs with Vanessa, the hidden credit card in year 6, the escalating comparisons in year 8, the coldness, the ultimatums, the way she made me feel smaller every year while demanding more. I'd seen all of it. I just hadn't wanted to look. Now I look at everything. It's been 2 years since the divorce now. I'm sitting on the same porch, watching the same sunset. But everything else is different. The business is thriving. We landed 3 major contracts this year, including a medical office complex that's our biggest project ever. I promoted my longtime foreman to partner and hired 4 new project managers. I'm seeing someone. Her name is Rachel. She's a nurse, trauma unit at Carolina's Medical Center. We met at a charity event, introduced by a friend I've known for 20 years. She's nothing like Vanessa. Practical where Vanessa was extravagant. Direct where Vanessa was manipulative. Warm where Vanessa was calculating. I told her everything on our 4th date. Not because I wanted sympathy, but because I wanted her to understand who I was and what I'd been through. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "That sounds really hard." It was. Are you over it? I thought about the question. I don't know if you ever get completely over something like that. I think you get through it. Are you through it? Mostly. There are still moments, but they're less frequent now. She reached across the table and took my hand. I was engaged once, 4 years ago. Found out he'd been cheating 6 weeks before the wedding. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was the best thing that could have happened. Better to find out before than after. What did you learn from it? She thought for a moment. I learned to trust actions over words. I learned to pay attention to patterns. I learned that when something feels wrong, it probably is. She squeezed my hand, and I learned that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. She's right. That's one of the truest things anyone's ever said to me. I think about Vanessa sometimes. Not often. Not with anger or longing or even much curiosity. Just occasional passing thoughts. Like you might think about a house you used to live in or a road you used to drive. I wonder if she's happy. I wonder if she ever found the more she was always chasing. I wonder if she looks back on our marriage and sees what I see. 11 years of deception, of performance, of 2 people living in completely different stories. I don't know the answers, and I've accepted that I never will. Because the truth is, I never really knew her. Not really. I knew the character she played. I knew the mask she wore. I knew the version of herself she'd constructed to get what she wanted. The real Vanessa, whoever that is, was always a stranger. The night I changed the locks, I stood in my doorway for a long time. The brass deadbolt gleamed in the afternoon light. The house was silent behind me. The life I'd known for 11 years was ending. and I felt peaceful, not happy, not vindicated, not triumphant, just peaceful, like a weight I hadn't known I was carrying had finally been lifted, like I could breathe in ways I'd forgotten were possible. I thought about all the mornings I'd woken up in that house feeling anxious, inadequate, insufficient. All the evenings I'd come home to criticism disguised as concern. All the years I'd spent performing a version of myself designed to minimize conflict and maximize survival. That was over now. Whatever came next would be different. Whatever came next would be mine. I closed the door, turned the new lock, and walked into the rest of my life. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I know this is a long story. I know it's not always comfortable. I know some of you are going through something similar right now. The creeping suspicion, the ignored warning signs, the hope that things will somehow get better on their own. They won't. Not until you make them better. Not until you start paying attention to the evidence instead of the excuses. Not until you choose yourself. So here's my question for you. What's your or else moment? What's the thing you've been tolerating, accepting, ignoring, because confronting it feels too scary, too painful, too final? What would happen if you stopped pretending? I'm not saying to blow up your life tomorrow. I'm not saying to make impulsive decisions based on fear or anger. But I am saying, look, really look, because the evidence is always there. You just have to be willing to see it. The nature of betrayal. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened. 2 years gives you perspective, distance from the crisis, space to process. And here's what I've come to understand. Betrayal isn't just about the act itself. It's about the echo. When Vanessa lied to me, she wasn't just lying about where she was or how she was spending money. She was rewriting our entire history. Every memory I had of our marriage became suspect after I learned the truth. That vacation we took in year 4, was she already plotting then? That conversation we had about kids, was she ever serious? Or was it always just another delay tactic? The nights she seemed happy, the moments that felt genuine, were any of them real? I'll never know. And that's the cruelest part of betrayal. It doesn't just steal your present. It poisons your past. I've talked to other people who've been through similar experiences, men and women both. Different details, same pattern. The discovery, the shock, the excavation of every shared memory looking for clues. They all describe the same thing. The feeling that you've been living someone else's story without knowing it. That you were a character in a narrative you didn't write and didn't understand. That's what Vanessa did to me. For 11 years, I thought I was the protagonist of our marriage. The faithful husband, working hard, building a life, believing in partnership and commitment. I wasn't. I was a supporting character, a resource to be extracted, a mark to be played. And the worst part is, I let it happen. Not because I was stupid, not because I was naive, but because I wanted to believe. Because believing was easier than looking, because the truth was too painful to confront. That's on me, and accepting that responsibility has been the hardest part of the healing process. People ask me if I can ever trust again. It's a fair question. When you've been burned as badly as I was, the instinct is to build walls, to protect yourself, to never let anyone close enough to hurt you again. I understand that instinct. I felt it strongly in the first year after the divorce. Every new relationship felt like a potential trap. Every kindness seemed suspect. Every moment of vulnerability felt like a mistake. But here's what I've learned. Walls don't protect you. They isolate you. If I'd built walls after Vanessa, I would have kept out the pain. But I would have kept out everything else, too. The possibility of genuine connection, the potential for real partnership, the chance to build something true. So instead of walls, I built something different. I built discernment. I learned to read people more carefully, to watch for patterns, to trust slowly over time, based on consistent evidence rather than promises or chemistry or hope. I learned to ask hard questions, of others and of myself, to dig beneath surface explanations, to follow my instincts when something felt off. I learned that trust isn't something you give away all at once. It's something you extend in increments, based on demonstrated reliability. Rachel and I built our relationship that way, slowly, carefully. Each step earned through consistent behavior over time. It's not romantic in the fairy tale sense. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic declarations, no sweeping certainty that this was the one. Instead, there was evidence. Small kindnesses that accumulated, promises kept, words matched by actions. The slow construction of something real. And that's enough. More than enough. If I could go back and talk to the version of myself who proposed on that beach in Charleston, here's what I'd tell him. First, don't ignore the anomalies. When something doesn't add up, an expense you can't explain, a story that doesn't quite track, a feeling in your gut that something is wrong, investigate. Don't rationalize. Don't assume the best. Check. I saw anomalies with Vanessa from early in our marriage. The mysterious credit card, the business that never made money, the escalating spending that didn't match her income. I explained them away. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I chose belief over evidence. That was a mistake. Second, financial transparency is non-negotiable. In a healthy relationship, both partners should have full visibility into the money. Not because you're suspicious, because clarity is the foundation of trust. I let Vanessa handle the finances because it seemed efficient, because I was busy with work, because I trusted her. That trust was exploited. And by the time I realized what was happening, she'd built a separate financial life right under my nose. Don't let that happen to you. Third, ultimatums are red flags, not roadmaps. When someone threatens you, do this or else, they're not negotiating. They're manipulating. They're trying to use fear to override your judgment. Healthy relationships don't work that way. Healthy partners discuss, compromise, collaborate. They don't issue demands backed by unnamed threats. I should have recognized Vanessa's ultimatums for what they were. Attempts to control me through fear. Instead, I caved. Again and again. Until caving became my default response. That pattern nearly cost me everything. Fourth, you're allowed to choose yourself. This might be the most important lesson. For 11 years, I prioritized Vanessa's needs over my own. Her happiness, her comfort, her vision of what our life should look like. I told myself that's what good husbands do. That's what partnership means. But it wasn't partnership. It was sacrifice. And the person benefiting from that sacrifice was never going to reciprocate. You're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to say no when something feels wrong. That's not selfishness. That's self-respect. And without self-respect, you can't build anything real with anyone else. The morning after I changed the locks, I woke up alone in a house that felt both familiar and strange. Vanessa's things were still everywhere. Her clothes in half the closet, her products in the bathroom, the decorative touches she'd insisted on. Throw pillows, accent walls, artwork I'd never chosen. I made coffee and walked through the rooms, looking at everything with new eyes. This wasn't our home anymore. It was mine. And I had no idea what to do with it. Those first weeks were hard, harder than I expected. The divorce machinery was grinding along, lawyers and documents and court dates, but the emotional reality was something else entirely. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., reaching for someone who wasn't there. I'd cook dinner for two out of habit, then sit alone at a table set for one. I'd hear a noise in the other room and feel a jolt of fear. She's back, before remembering that she wasn't coming back. Not ever. There's a name for what I was experiencing. Grief. Even when you're glad something is over, you grieve the loss of what you thought it was, the dream, if not the reality. I gave myself permission to feel that. I didn't rush to move on or get over it or any of the other things well-meaning people tell you to do. I sat with the loss. I acknowledged it. I let it move through me at its own pace. And eventually, not quickly, not easily, but eventually, it passed. Over the following year, I transformed the house. Not because I needed to erase Vanessa, though that was part of it, but because I needed to make the space mine, to fill it with choices I'd made, not compromises I'd accepted. I started with the kitchen, ripped out the cabinets she'd chosen, white, modern, cold, replaced them with warm wood, traditional style, the kind of kitchen my grandmother had. Marble countertops, yes, but butcher block island. A space for cooking, not just displaying. I redid the living room. The furniture she'd picked was beautiful but uncomfortable, designed for photographs, not living. I replaced it with deep couches, soft fabrics, pieces you actually wanted to sit in. I turned her home office into a guest room. Simple bed, clean lines, a window that looked out on the garden I'd planted. Each change was small, but together they transformed the house from a showcase into a home. My mother visited after I finished. She walked through every room, touching surfaces, looking at the photos I'd finally hung on the walls. "It feels different," she said. "It is different. It feels like you." That was the point. I get asked about forgiveness a lot. Have I forgiven Vanessa? Could I forgive her? Should I forgive her? It's complicated. I don't hate her anymore. The white-hot anger of the divorce has faded into something more like indifference. She's a person I used to know, a chapter that's closed. But forgiveness, true forgiveness, requires something I don't have: understanding. I don't understand how you can share a bed with someone for 11 years while systematically deceiving them. I don't understand how you can look at a person who loves you and see only a resource to extract. I don't understand how you can plan someone's destruction while pretending to be their partner. That's not a failure of empathy on my part. It's a failure of imagination. I literally cannot conceive of operating that way. So I've settled for something less than forgiveness, but more than resentment. I've let go. I've released the need for answers I'll never get. I've stopped trying to understand motivations that don't make sense. I've accepted that some people operate by rules I don't comprehend and never will. Letting go isn't the same as forgiving, but it's close enough. And it's freed me to focus on what matters: the life I'm building, not the one that was destroyed. I'm sitting on my porch as I finish this story. It's evening. The light is fading. Somewhere in the neighborhood, someone's grilling dinner, and the smell drifts over the fence. 2 years ago, I changed the locks on my house and ended my marriage. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. It was also the best. Because here's what I know now: you can survive betrayal. You can rebuild after destruction. You can emerge from the wreckage of a marriage that was always a lie and build something true. But you have to be willing to look at the evidence, to face the truth, to choose or else when or else is the only honest option left. Vanessa gave me an ultimatum that night over spaghetti bolognese. $20,000 for Bali or else. She thought she was tightening the screws, increasing the pressure, forcing me back into compliance like she always had. She didn't realize she was setting me free, because or else became the door I finally walked through. And on the other side was everything that mattered. Truth, clarity, self-respect, the chance to build something real with someone who means it. If you're facing your own or else moment, if you're looking at evidence you don't want to see, asking questions you're afraid to answer, let my story be your permission. Choose or else. Choose yourself. Choose truth, and see what's on the other side. Thanks for listening. If this story helped you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you're going through something similar, know that you're not alone. And remember, the locks you change on the outside don't matter if you don't change the ones on the inside too. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one.